Yeah. I think
Fine.
we're
Should we try
going
again?
live.
Yeah.
Yes. Look, I think we're chatting today at a time of obviously real distress among the folks that read your writing and read our writing here. Um, what do you tell people who are just absolutely feeling like sort of hopeless about the situation?
First of all, remember that you have a lot of friends in the United States, that there will be a reaction to what Trump has done, both in the Oval Office and his abrupt decision to cut off aid. That story is not over, and there's nothing is finished. So that seems pretty clear to me. Secondly, I would say that what has just happened in Europe, the 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 galvanizing effect of this series of events, actually not just about Ukraine, but other things, has created a change of a kind that I've never seen before. I've actually just been in Germany. I was there for a couple of days, and coincidentally, I was in Lithuania over the weekend. I'm now in Warsaw. The people get it; they understand that this is a different kind of a U.S. administration, and that has effects not only on what will be European policy towards Ukraine, but more broadly towards the United States. I think the Europeans have never been more deadly serious about defense. I think the Germans are preparing to change their constitution so that they can spend more on defense. I've just seen some polling in France that shows much more support for Ukraine and for helping the war and helping the Ukrainians than I would have imagined, given how grumpy the French are about everything else. And of course, you have Poland, you have Scandinavia, you have the UK, you have, of course, the Baltic states. You have a kind of a group of allies who understand what's happening, who understand how serious the circumstances are, and who are preparing to help. I mean, there isn't right now. The main problem Europe has is it doesn't have a mechanism for coordinating aid or defense of Ukraine. It doesn't have, NATO is structured around the United States. The EU is an inappropriate forum for all kinds of reasons, not least because the Hungarians now act as Russian proxies and they block everything. So they're going to need to create something a little bit different, and they're working on it. So I think you will discover that you have quite broad and deep support in Europe, and I do believe that. I think this is a different even from the shock of 2022 when we had the announcement about the German Zeitenwende, the big change and so on. I think this is in some ways an even bigger shock, and so. It doesn't mean that anything is over or the war has to end in some kind of ugly capitulation. Thirdly, I would say, I don't know what Trump is thinking now, but I do know that in the conversations he had with European leaders right after he was elected, he frequently said to them, that he doesn't want some kind of loss or surrender or catastrophe in Ukraine because that would make him look bad. He's worried that, in the same way that the disaster in Afghanistan really, I think, permanently affected perceptions of Biden. He doesn't want this to affect him. And I think, there were a lot of expectations that he might do something dramatic or ugly in his State of the Union speech last night, and he didn't do that. And I suspect that's partly because they may now understand that they've gone too far. I mean, I know that may not sound like much, but it's something. Ukraine, from everything I know, is going to be able to keep fighting. Even if the U.S. doesn't renew these shipments, we'll be able to keep fighting in the next few months, and probably until the end of this year. So there is a wave, a surge of support, and a change of atmosphere in Europe that I think will help a lot.
But as we see the bifurcation of longtime allies, and the West, as we've seen it, as you've written about in your book, kind of breaking apart, this transatlantic alliance just sort of collapsing. How much more likely does that make conflict in the year?
You just froze, but I'll try and answer what I think was your question. I'll try and answer your question. Um,
Sure.
I mean, honestly, if we are at the breakup of the transatlantic alliance, and we aren't there yet. I mean, NATO is still there, and American troops are still in Europe, and all kinds of contracts and deals and arrangements are still in place. I mean, if we are talking about that, then it's actually even more profound and long-reaching than just the war in Ukraine. I mean, I know that's the primary interest of people on listening right now, but it would have an effect on all kinds of trade and business arrangements. It would have an effect culturally. I think there would be a reaction against American, movies and products in Europe. I think that would follow, a shift in perceptions of what the United States is, that it's an adversary rather than a friend, would have cascading effects throughout, you know, throughout European life. Um, I mean, I
But
suppose
does it make war more
the danger
likely?
is the main danger for the main security issue. There's two security issues. One is, NATO's main function is as a deterrent. I mean, NATO is not an offensive alliance. NATO is there as a tripwire, so that Russia or anybody else wouldn't invade Europe, because they would know that the U.S. and Europe would respond together. And not having the U.S. part of that response does weaken the tripwire. I mean, I won't deny that. And this is why I think you're seeing the Europeans seek to create a new one, and why there's talk of creating a new kind of Franco-British nuclear umbrella to protect European countries. So there would have to be something else put in place. I mean, undeniably, the deterrent would be weaker. I mean, it's not clear to me that Putin is in a position right now, even without NATO, to invade anybody else, since he's not successfully invaded Ukraine and his army is much depleted. So it's not. I don't know I don't think there's an imminent invasion about to happen, or anything like that. But what to watch over the next few weeks is how the Europeans go about recreating a deterrent in the absence of the United States, if that's indeed where we're going.
I just got back from Taiwan, and there's a huge amount of alarm about whether the United States ought to be trusted as a partner going forward, and that what's happening to Ukraine, it's only a matter of time until it happens to Taiwan. There's this idea that what Trump is trying to do is enter into some sort of grand bargain with Russia to dissect the Russian and Chinese strategic partnership, and then turn to China for a kind of grand bargain with China as well. Do you see that as a likely scenario? Do you see that as kind of where the Trump administration is going? And if so, what are the implications for other democracies in the world, smaller democracies in the world that have depended on the United States?
I mean, well, first of all, I think the idea that the United States will somehow separate Russia from China, if that is indeed their intent, is very foolish. Russia is economically dependent on China. Russian economy would fall apart without China's. Also, it's the case that Putin and Xi very much share a worldview. I mean, this isn't just it's not just an alliance of convenience. They have a similar view about the danger of liberal democracy for their own societies and for their own power. They've been working together for a long time. I think they both view the Trump administration as if nothing else, very unreliable and erratic. And I don't think either one of them is going to depend on Trump as some kind of full-time big partner. So I don't think we're going to see a separation of Russia and China. So that's not going to happen. I wouldn't be surprised if the Trump administration does have some kind of idea of a big grand bargain. I mean, certainly this is Putin's idea, that there will be some kind of three-way meeting with Russia and China and the United States, and that they'll divide up the world. But that's a very that forgets that if that's what they want, they're forgetting that Europe has agency, that even Ukraine has agency, that there are other countries who won't like this grand bargain and who will begin to take actions against it. You'll see new kinds of alliances. I mean, Canada and the European Union, and the Asian democracies will begin to work together in new ways. And this is not just about Taiwan, but South Korea, Japan, Australia, and others. And that will also begin to have, that will have a countering effect. So I don't want people to feel that there's some kind of inevitable thing happening that won't be stopped and that they can't do anything about. Um, is it possible that they want some grand bargain? Yes, it is. I mean, certainly you've heard people both in Washington and in Moscow talking about that. Does that mean, some kind of conclusive, end of democracy in the world? No, I don't think so.
I mean, I would also kind of raise the question, why does Russia belong at a if there is a trilateral kind of three-way negotiation, to divvy up the world, it doesn't really seem to me that Russia belongs at a table
No.
with China and the United States, given its size, its influence, and its
And
capabilities.
Russia's the
Can you
size of
talk a little bit
Italy. I
about
mean,
that?
no, of course not. I mean,
Exactly.
if Russia's there, why aren't the Netherlands there? I mean, it's a,
Yeah.
also a very important economy. So no, and I also wonder whether China would want that because China, I don't think, sees itself as on par with Russia, in any real way. But it's clearly one of Putin's dreams, and it's also clear that Trump is picking up a lot of what Putin wants, and I don't know where exactly he's hearing it from, whether from Putin directly or through proxies or whether he's just reading it on the internet. But it's clear that he's echoing that. But I haven't heard the Chinese say anything.
And I know you're super busy, so I just have one more question, before we let you go to your many travels, and, I know you have a ton of writing and other conversations to have. Um, but, like, over and over and over again, what people are saying and how they're responding to the news is they're saying, "Everything makes me feel totally hopeless. What am I supposed to do with that feeling? How can I act to do something?" You talk a little bit about that in your book, but I'm wondering, given the latest developments, which have been pretty horrific for anyone who's supportive of Ukraine, what do you think ought to be done?
I mean, it depends who you are and where you are. I can't give general advice for all human beings. I mean, if you're an American, you should be involved in politics. You should be engaged in whatever your local elections or your local, join a political party, run for office. You should be thinking about what you can do there because one of the reasons we have ended up in the situation we're in is that people became lackadaisical about politics. Local politics was hollowed out. Local media has been hollowed out. People aren't participating in the way that they should. You should stay informed. You should stay engaged. All of those things are mattering. I mean, if you're Ukrainian, you should keep fighting the war and keep contributing to Ukrainian civil society. Keep building the war effort. The war is not over, and in fact, it may we may need your help more than ever. I would say this. I would say also to Europeans, make sure your politicians know that you support Ukraine. Be loud about that. Join the demonstrations that people have been holding in different cities. Keep supporting Ukrainian philanthropies and charities. There are a lot of great ones. You can support. Um, you can do backup for the army by supporting Come Back Alive. You can. There are a lot of local charities that are doing good work on the ground. So find one that you trust and understand, and help them. And all of those things. It's also very important to do things that make you feel engaged and not to become hopeless. Because one of the things that helps dictators is apathy and nihilism and apathy and feeling like you have to be checked out. You don't want to be involved. This is one of the things that encourages and leads to dictatorships. And we saw that in Russia. We've seen it in many other countries.
Thanks so much, Anne. I really appreciate you taking time out of your very busy schedule, and I hope we can chat again soon.
Yeah, thanks, Tim, and thanks for all your great work. I love your Substack, and I hope everybody subscribes to it. Thank you.
And yours as well. Talk to you soon. Bye, Anne.
Thanks.